With a fervent call for national unity, Joe Biden takes America's helm as the 46th President of the United States. Here in Texas, cries of protest resound as the new commander-in-chief pulls the plug on the Keystone XL pipeline. And in the heart of the pandemic-weary Bayou City, a controversial call to cut loose 2,000 criminal defendants from the nation's third-largest county jail. I'm Greg Groogan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, longtime Super Neighborhood leader Tomaro Bell. Next up, Charles Blain, founder of Urban Reform. In the 3 spot, Bob Price, associate editor of Breitbart Texas. Batting cleanup, Tony Diaz, host of Latino Politics and News on KPFT. And closing us out, well-known businessman and columnist Bill King. Let's begin. 2 weeks after the sacking of America's national capital, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. took the oath of office as our nation's 46th president. It was an inaugural ceremony indicative of these turbulent and deeply troubling times, bereft of jubilant crowds due to lingering pandemic, and encased in the security blanket of 25,000 National Guardsmen locked and loaded against the threat of violent extremists. The newly sworn 78-year-old Democrat pledged the overdue delivery of racial justice, new protection for an endangered planet, and an unprecedented level of coordination aimed at vanquishing the coronavirus once and for all. But most of all, the incoming president urged the mending of a septic ideological divide which has driven America to the very brink of insurrection.
For without unity, there is no peace. Only bitterness and fury. No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos.
Panel, in just the past few days, the new president put that call for unity to the test, announcing an amnesty plan for 11 million undocumented immigrants, a full halt to construction of the border wall, and a proposal to shell out nearly $2 trillion additional dollars in pandemic aid. It's a lot. Let's start with Tomaro Bell. Your take.
The inauguration was a wonderful ability to say, let's exhale. I mean it. I hated that I couldn't go because I would have been there supporting not only President Biden, but new VP-elect Kamala Harris, my AKA Sarah, who I'm so proud of. And I'm just really, really excited and hopeful for what the future has. To have a president come in office and give a speech about unity, to start off talking about unity, not division. Really, I'm telling you, it made me so hopeful. And then the people that he had on the program, especially Amber Goodwin, to see our future, to have them there, to let them know everybody is at the table. I love it. It lets you know when you have a seat at the table, you're not on the menu, you pray. I'm telling you. So I am very excited and very hopeful for the future.
Bob Price, I'm guessing with this slate of changes brought in with the new administration, it's very tough to appear unified when conservatives and Republicans are dead set against many of these initiatives.
Well, I think not just Republicans are against this. Many of the American people support some of the things that he did away with on his first day in office. This whole phony baloney Biden issue of unity for all, you know, it didn't take him just a few minutes into his speech to attack half of the country that voted for Donald Trump, to go in there and only talk about violence that was committed from the right in protest, nothing about what happened from the left. And then when you look at what he did on the border, you know, that creates even more divisiveness. Over 60% of the American people support securing our border, and Biden wiped that out with a pen stroke. I spoke with former CBP Commissioner Mark Morgan on Thursday, and he was just perplexed at what the Biden administration did with their executive orders. Not only did he stop funding of the border wall, but he eliminated the migrant protection protocol that stopped the catch and release program that was causing hundreds of thousands, actually 1 million people to come here during 2019. And that program stopped that migration in its tracks. And all you have to do is look down at the Guatemalan-Honduran border right now to see the tens of thousands of people, 10,000 people trying to force their way illegally from Honduras into Guatemala to make their way up here, even presenting fake COVID tests to try to sneak past immigration authorities there. Biden, in one pen stroke, eliminated 5,000 highly paid construction jobs down along the border. Those people make an average of $69,000 each. And that's $350 million in wages that he eliminated with a pen stroke.
Okay, Tony Diaz, those sound like legitimate concerns. Should we be worried about a horde of Central Americans saying, hey, the coast is clear, we're going to cross?
These are lingering right-wing stereotypes about our community.
There you go with the stereotypes.
Which Donald Trump kept pouring in. I want to remind America that the former president of the United States, who just led an insurrection, began his campaign by talking about people who look like me as hardcore criminals. What's been ignored is how Donald Trump also undermined Latino professionals when he really disparaged Judge Guriel, who said, he told America that Judge Guriel could not be a good judge because he was Mexican. That's over in pen strokes, because guess what? 70% of all Americans, including Republicans, believe in DACA, believe that the Dreamers should be helped, even though Donald Trump tried to undermine that. Additionally, too, most American business, especially in Texas, somehow relies on undocumented labor. I'm glad we're going to stop illegal Americans from having to hide and pay under the table. And now we can possibly come together in a fair way. This is a great new dawning for America.
All right, Bill King, I want to ask you this. Based upon what you've seen the Biden administration put on the table thus far, are they moving too rapidly in order to unify?
Well, yeah, I thought the speech was fine, and I welcome the sort of return to normalcy that it represented. But, you know, like Bob said, as soon as the speech was over, you start this whole series of executive orders that are nothing but to placate the far left of the Democratic Party. And that's not unity in my mind. So far, he doesn't act like he's going to govern from the middle. And look, I would love for us to get immigration reform done finally. We've needed to do that for 30 years in this country. But you can't just say, you can't enforce a law that's not enforceable, which is what we've currently got. We need to fix the law. But also, you can't just say we're going to have a law and not enforce it. I mean, we need rational immigration reform. I think both parties have kind of figured out that this stalemate they've been in is not good for either one of them. So maybe we'll get immigration reform out of this. I certainly hope so. Okay,
Charles Blain, last 20 seconds goes to you. We're going to hear from you in the next block, but go.
Yeah, I think from day one, he sent a message to his core constituency, Black Americans, that he is not going to put their agenda first. What we saw was a lot of focus on immigration. One important point is, though, is that he reversed Trump's rule that was banning the census count of unauthorized immigrants. And so Rep. Phil King, who chairs the redistricting committee, said that by doing that, you're now going to count 2 million unauthorized immigrants in Texas, which might lead to 1, 2, or 3 additional congressional seats that Republicans will be able to redistrict. And so I think that's an unintended consequence of some of what he did. And so I'm interested to see how this plays out. But he definitely sent a message to his core constituency starting on day one.
Hold that thought. We're coming back in a second. Up next, the incoming president terminates the controversial Keystone XL pipeline. Will Texas pay a heavy price in lost jobs and revenue? We'll be right back, just like Garth Brooks when he almost forgot to say hi to the Bushes during the inauguration. Among the more controversial moves made this week by the incoming Biden administration, the revocation of the cross-border presidential permit for the $8 billion Keystone XL pipeline. The multi-year project was set to bring oil sands from Alberta, Canada, to the Texas coast for refining. Lone Star State Republicans have reacted with unanimous outrage, calling Biden's move a job killer that will raise prices at the pump for everyday Americans and deal a crunching blow to the Houston economy in particular. Panel, the president's supporters claim the cancellation is one of many essential steps to combat climate change. Let me start with you, Charles Blain. What's your take here?
So I think one of the big questions that everyone was asking during the general election was that if Biden wins, will he bow to the progressive activists in the party? And I think this answer answers that question. The answer is yes. By doing this, energy costs are going to go up. He's killing something like 2,000 union jobs. He's straining an already strained relationship with Canada. And Alberta's head of the government said that they already invested $1 billion in developing this pipeline, and now they might seek legal recourse so that they can recoup some of the funds. So, I mean, I just don't see the purpose of this. It's just a way for him to give in to the progressive wing of his party.
Okay, Tony Diaz, to make gains in the war against climate change, do we have to make sacrifices?
Let me put it this way. I don't want anyone to lose their jobs, but guess what? Even under Donald Trump, when he was in power and supposedly friendly to the whole oil business, so many oil companies went bankrupt. Additionally, he was giving away the Alaska land so they could do their drilling there. No one took him up on it. It's not Democrats killing these jobs. Evolution, it's the COVID-19 downturn. The Keystone Pipeline was basically putting in danger and running under backyards from Canada to Houston, including Barrio, Manchester. So this is a time to pause and make sure that America is a leader. We can't be going after the new coal mining jobs of oil. We got to be ahead of this to stay a world leader. We got to be the head of new energy.
Okay, Bob Price, I want to give you a chance to rebut that.
Well, just real quickly, in a pen stroke, the president, if you're a member of the United Steelworkers Union or the Pipe Fitters Union who endorsed Joe Biden for president, this is what your president did to you. He eliminated tens of thousands of jobs, high-paying jobs of union workers and other workers here in Texas who benefited from this. And let's go back to the Obama-Biden administration for just a second. If you remember when they blocked the Keystone Pipeline before, Canada said they were going to have to sell that oil then to, guess who? China.
All right, Bill King, as I remember correctly, you are the successful son of a pipe fitter. What do you think of this new policy?
Yeah, it's complete nonsense. Obama's EPA cleared the environmental on this project. Obama's EPA cleared. You know what I'm saying? Number two, there will not be 1 ounce of carbon reduction as a result of this, because that oil is going to be moved by rail car instead of pipeline, which, by the way, is much more risky from an environmental standpoint, or it's going to be shipped to China. It's going to be burned there. This is a complete waste of time and an opportunity. Okay, folks, got to leave it there. Coming up, as he relinquishes the presidency, what does the future hold for the now former commander-in-chief? Impeachment, legacy, pardons, and a potential 2024 run, all on the table when we return. Welcome back, everybody. We turn now to America's outgoing president. No question, a lightning rod of controversy who remains the most influential leader in a fractured Republican Party. From his Florida state, Donald J. Trump will watch as his successor rapidly reverses the majority of his administration's policy positions. Deregulation, disengagement from the World Health Organization, the Paris Climate Accords, the canceled Iran nuke treaty, all set for an about-face. The hard line on immigration, the cozy relationship with dictators, and Trump's genuinely historic tax cuts, all on the Biden chopping block. No doubt the former president will defend his legacy, but first he must defend himself in a second Senate impeachment trial. Panel, a legitimate question from the viewer we know is Paul Collier. Should Congress continue the impeachment of a private citizen? I'm going to ask you that question, Tomaro Bell.
Absolutely, when the private citizen is a past president who led insurrection against the government, they definitely should. I can't even believe it when people ask, should there be consequences for your action? We live in a system that causes consequences for your action. When you get out there and tell them, let's roll up on the Capitol, hey, I'm going to shoot y'all the deuce, I'm with y'all, and go back in the White House and watch it. And when your VP is saying, send in the National Guard, I need the National Guard, and he can't get anybody to do it, he do it himself, hell yeah, they need to go on and finish.
All right, Bob Price, jump in here.
Well, the key question in any trial is jurisdiction, and the Senate has no jurisdiction over a private citizen in an impeachment trial. So, and that's been proven by precedent back in 1876 when they tried to impeach a Secretary of War who had been removed from office. The Senate voted that they did not have jurisdiction in that case because he had left office. The same thing applies here. If you go back and look at President Trump's record, let's ignore the things that conservatives would agree on. What about the tax cuts, the doubling of the child care credit, the peace in the Middle East, the rapid movement of creating the COVID vaccine? All of these things are things that every American should be able to agree on, and the country was much better off because of Donald Trump.
Okay, Tony Diaz, I want you to take a shot at this.
Ever since Donald Trump was a hack businessman trying to play with laws and rules with homeowner associations and ripping off poor contractors, he's been bending the rules, bending the laws, unlike all of us who have to pay for consequences. I'm sorry, if you're the president of the United States and promote the overthrow of the government in the last moments of your tenure, you need to be tried by the Senate. The balance of power is more important than any political party.
He's not the president of the United States anymore, Tony.
And in fact, I think what's good is that we're going to redefine this definition of what this policy is. He used that in his favor to bend the laws. We as the people must test this law right now because we're in uncharted waters. So this is a new era. We got to teach every subsequent president that you cannot promote the overthrow of the government and maintain the very important title of president. If he is impeached, he should lose the title of president. He should lose any benefits, including security. He shouldn't get paid, and it should go down as the record as not only did he get impeached twice, he got kicked out of office.
Except impeachment doesn't do any of those things.
And he lost 3 elections.
Hold on here, Bill King. I want to ask you this from your position squarely in the middle. What is the real politique of pushing on with an impeachment of someone who's essentially a private citizen?
Well, it's a show trial because we know he's not going to be convicted because you can't get to the 2/3. So the whole purpose of this trial is to try to put Republicans on the record voting against impeachment so that can be used against them in their next election. That's the entire sum total purpose of what's going to be basically a show trial.
All right, Charles Blain, do you think the president, the ex-president, is positioning for a 2024 run? And what are your thoughts on this upcoming impeachment trial in the Senate?
Well, yeah, I do think, I don't think he's necessarily positioning for a run. I think he's positioning to be an influencer in politics moving forward. And so my brother's texting me saying that, yes, they need to impeach him. Listen, I think at this point it has become a personal vendetta that they just want to go down in history as having really stuck it to him. I think when, like Bob was saying, there have been successes and you can't ignore those. The 25% lowest paid Americans enjoyed a 4.5% increase. 7 million jobs were created. More Americans were employed than any time in American history. $1 trillion was brought back overseas from companies during the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. 4,000 VA employees were fired, demoted, or reprimanded because of bad action at the VA, and so he was trying to straighten out the VA. So there's a lot of things that we can't ignore. You can be mad at the man, you can be angry at some of the things he did, but the successes under his administration cannot be ignored. And I think what they're trying to do with his impeachment is just eradicate the entire legacy.
But it's because you all are ignoring the fact that we're different than we ever been.
We got to leave it there. Up next, a Texas advisor to the president offers his take on the direction and tone of the Biden leadership to come. Welcome back. For much of the 2020 campaign, Joe Biden's Republican opponents portrayed the Delaware Democrat as a political captive of the hyper-progressive socialist wing of his party. In our search for perspective, we turn to occasional Watch Your Point panelists and, more importantly, Biden Texas campaign advisor Mike Collier for insight. You worked early. You worked hard for Joe Biden. What is this president going to bring to the table?
Well, I hope a lot less drama. I think a boring presidency so that we can go back to all the other things that matter in our lives would be a welcome change. And he's got a lot of experience, which is terrific. I mean, he has seen us come out of the Great Recession and saw what worked and how you do it politically. I think that's very encouraging. He's, in terms of foreign policy, he knows an awful lot. He's a calm person. He takes the stage and puts you to sleep, and I couldn't be happier.
Mike Collier, there were a lot of Democratic candidates that you could have thrown your support behind, but you chose Joe Biden. What attracted you?
Well, I'll be very honest, Greg. When he said that this election was for the soul of the country, I agreed with that. That's exactly the way I was feeling. And I was so pleased to hear that. Point number one. Point number two, if you line up his policy point of view with my policy point of view, you don't see a whole lot of daylight. And I think that what he has in mind for Texas is really quite good for Texas. Healthcare, for example, the whole idea that we are allowed to keep our private insurance, if that's what you want, and that we focus our energies on people who can't afford insurance. I think that's a much better answer than some of the other things that folks were proposing. I know the Texans are concerned about what Joe will mean for the energy industry. I've never been the least bit concerned about that. Yes, he'll invest in renewables. I welcome that. That'll be very good for the state. I mean, there's an awful lot of great things that are happening in terms of jobs and making money in renewables, but we're still going to need oil and gas. We have to do it cleanly and safely. So I think Texans are going to be very pleased. And, you know, he's pro public education, and so am I. And we're looking at the numbers that the legislature is going to have to work with. Comptroller Hager came out with his numbers a couple of days ago. I'm afraid that they're missing something. They're not giving us an apples to apples comparison. If you do apples to apples, you'll see that the money available in this session is going to be substantially less than was available in the last session. So we're going to rely on federal support for public education, and we have a president who is pro public education. So I like how those pieces fit together.
He talks about healing, and you have gauged the severe division in our country. Is that his most daunting challenge?
Oh, I think so. I think so. And I think it's made very, very difficult, very, very difficult, not just by Trump's behavior. I mean, we all know Donald Trump, and pretty soon he's no longer going to be in the Oval Office. But I must say, Greg, that I'm very, very troubled by the continuing, and our elected leaders here in the state. Nobody gets a pass. There's still, and it's all Republicans, are still telling people that the election was stolen. Whereas the Republicans that actually worked on it, judges, election officials, Republicans, even members of the own administration, even William Barr has said that this was a fair election. And so to the extent that people continue to put fuel on that fire without even giving us any evidence, I think is very, very destabilizing, and it's going to take a long, long time. I don't think that we can live in harmony politically until that's passed.
Just ahead, a new player in the ongoing war between Houston's mayor and the city's firefighters. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patric proposes peace talks and a return to the bargaining table.
We can't bust budgets and bankrupt cities, but we also can't sit in our office at City Hall and say, I'm not talking to the firefighters. That's not right, Greg, and the public doesn't want that.
Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patric came to Houston this week with an offer to broker peace in the deeply septic, long-running labor dispute between firefighters and Mayor Sylvester Turner. How bad is it? First responders in our city are battling the pandemic without having received a substantial increase in pay since 2011. Folks, that's a decade. Contract talks are non-existent as the combatants wait for a Texas appeals court to rule on a pair of two-year-old lawsuits, each with the potential to devastate the city's financial conditions if firefighters prevail. Fire Chief Sam Pena says while the union has turned down 3 different pay hikes, he's willing to get back to the bargaining table. Panel, Patrick's offer to mediate was clearly a message. What do you make of it? I'm going to start with Tomaro Bell.
I'm hoping when he said to mediate, just to set up the meeting and let them have arbitrators in the room with them. I am disappointed that this has went on this long. I said it before. I said it again. I don't like it that you got the police and the firefighters at battle like Bloods and Crips. I don't think that's right. It's not good for citizens because you don't need your first responders at a time like this. I don't care whether they're officers or firefighters having low morale or feeling that they're being in some way disserved. I hope that they can come to some kind of decision. And I'm really shocked that the courts are taking so long. I can't even wrap my head around why that's going on so long. So I hope they can do something.
Charles Blain, you've been watching this controversy pretty closely. What's your take on Patrick's offer to broker peace?
I mean, listen, it's frustrating. I think we can all agree that firefighters always get the short end of the stick. And as citizens, we want to see something better for them. But do I think that this is going to change it? I can't see that it will. I mean, you got Turner and you have Patric, two of the most powerful elected officials in the state, neither of which really push each other to do very much that they don't want to do. And so I don't necessarily, I mean, in Turner, I just don't know what much he has to lose. He's not running for re-election. There's rumor that he's going to run for other office. So maybe there's a concern there that might make him move, but I just don't see a thing that's pushing him to move. What could help is if city council had the power to bring something on the agenda and they could force the discussion on this. That's why people should sign the citizen-led petition to give council members more power, because that's really the only thing that's going to be able to break log jams like this.
Bill King, is Mayor Turner gambling with the city's financial future, and would a prudent hedge be to try to get back to the table, even agree to binding arbitration?
Well, of course, the firefighters have had that on the table for, a couple of years now, I guess. As nearly as I can tell, Sylvester's strategy here is to run out the clock during his administration and not have to deal with this. If the city were to lose, there's really two different lawsuits out there. One is over pay and one is over the pension. The firefighters at the district court won the pension suit. They lost the pay suit. Both of those are in the 14th Court of Appeals. If they were to lose both of those lawsuits, it's probably a bankruptcy event for the city of Houston. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And I don't understand what's going on at the 14th Court of Appeals. Tracy Christopher is the Chief Justice there. I've known her for a long time. I've appeared before as a lawyer. She's a really good judge. I do not understand why the 14th Court of Appeals is not deciding these cases, because the clock is running, and the whole time it's running, the bill is running up on it. We need to get these cases resolved.
Okay, Bob Price, you're married to a pretty good lawyer, and you've been following this controversy. What's going on here?
Well, I'm married to a great lawyer, by the way. And so this controversy is not going to end until Sylvester Turner is no longer the mayor of Houston. Kudos to Governor Patric for coming in and trying to be the adult in the room and trying to bring these two sides together. But Turner is nothing but about revenge against the firefighters. He's even stripped the paycheck of the president of the Firefighters Association. So to think there's going to be any kind of reasonable discussion there is just completely out of the question. The firefighters deserve a raise. They deserve a raise that doesn't come with a poison pill of being able to protect their pension rights. But also the citizens of Houston and Texas don't need to have the city go bankrupt either. So we've got to find a real solution.
Okay, Chief Sam Pena points out that there have been 3 offers independently for pay raises to the firefighters. Tony, should that be part of this conversation?
There's a lot of important nuances that should be attended to. I think we all support the Houston firefighters. But Dan Patric, please, he needs to get his own house in order first. Let's see, he's got a Republican Texas Attorney General who is indicted. Let's see, Ted Cruz, basically this insurrectionist. I think Dan Patric still owes the Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania a couple of $1 million when Dan Patric tried to put a reward for finding fraud in the elections, and homeboy in Pennsylvania found a bunch of Republicans breaking election laws. This is all for show. Dan Patric is trying to run to be the new Jan Brewer, and if you don't remember who she is, she's an Arizona right-wing governor who's gone. So go back to Austin, do your job, Dan Patric.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Next up, the controversy of targeting communities of color with a disproportionate share of coronavirus vaccine. Is it smart, life-saving science or discrimination? After prioritizing vaccine distribution to lower-income communities of color, Dallas County leaders have been forced to reel back that policy after state health officials threatened to reduce their allotment. A spokesperson for the state health department told the Dallas Morning News no provider can, quote, exclude large swaths of the population. Panel, we all know minority neighborhoods have been hit hardest by COVID, but should there be targeted with extra vaccine, or does that amount to reverse discrimination? I'm starting with you, Tomaro Bell.
In the medical profession, if you ever go to the ER and everything, they triage. It's whether you're going to deal with the heart attack, whether you're going to deal with the pregnancy, or whether you're going to deal with the broke leg. They triage. I do believe that the vaccines should be triaged, and don't say we're not doing that. That's why they go into the senior citizen homes first. That's why they're saying, oh, give it to the age first. What is that, age discrimination? Because they're starting with them instead of the young people. They're looking at what's most vulnerable. I don't believe it should be an exclusivity that, oh, we only gonna do minority communities, but I do believe that the vaccines should be given out in a proportion the most vulnerable, which is what they are doing nationally. They're starting with the seniors, they're starting with the convalescent homes. So I think that they should have done it in a way where it was prioritized by who's most highly infected, but not exclusively.
Okay, Bill King, deal with this issue briefly and then give us an update on your deep dive in the numbers.
Well, the good news is the vaccine is coming remarkably fast. I sort of lose my patience with everybody saying how terrible the rollout is. Through yesterday, we had vaccinated 20 million people in the United States. If you recall back in the spring when Trump announced warp speed, he was ridiculed that we could possibly even have a vaccine by this time, much less have 20 million people get one of the doses. So it's actually going very well, in my opinion. I do agree with Tomaro that I think you need to think about triage in terms of allocating it. And people keep saying that it's communities of colors. It's really the Hispanic community that suffered way disproportionately to everybody else in this. And I think that's because of multi-generational households. I think it's because, they occupy so many of those frontline worker positions. They've been exposed to it a lot more. And the fatality rates there are much higher. And so getting into the arms of older Hispanics, I'm 100% for that.
Okay, final 30 seconds goes to Tony Diaz. Is this reverse discrimination or is this a sound science?
It's sound science. Actually, in Dallas, they identified 11 zip codes where those affected really needed a lot of help. And again, these are a lot of folks that are lower income, don't have college degrees. And it turns out that those folks are African-American, Chicanas, Central American, who don't have access to internet and maybe have to work instead of get in line or chase where these vaccines are. Sounds fair, and these practices have been used against us before because same process is used to keep us from getting bank loans. When they figure out where you live, how much you make, and what the makeup is, they redline you, they redistrict you. So they should really try and be fair to our communities.
Okay, we got to leave it there. Still to come, the controversial call to release 2,000 Harris County defendants from an overcrowded jail. Is it too big a risk for the general public or a life-preserving countermeasure as the pandemic lingers on? Welcome back. As the Harris County Jail reaches capacity amid a lingering pandemic, Judge Lena Hidalgo and others are again pushing for the immediate release of 2,000 criminal defendants, citing the ongoing health risk of so many people living and working in confinement. State Senator Paul Bettencourt and others are pushing back in federal court, calling the proposed mass release a, quote, crime bomb that will pose a clear and immediate danger to public safety. Panel, which is the greater threat? I start with you, Charles Blain.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a difficult one. I work with guys who are nearing and post-release, and so I do have kind of a soft spot in my heart for this. But when you look at this, what we're talking about is we're talking about a vast majority of people who are pre-trial. They have not been convicted of a crime, of the crime in which they're being held. And so you have to look at that, but you also have to consider that felony PR bond should only be used sparingly because some of these people are higher risk. But what is not being discussed is that the sheriff's hand is being forced by the O'Donnell decision, which came down a few years ago, which, and I quote, says that these people have to be really misdemeanors need to be prompt release on unsecured bonds for a vast majority of them. So what we need to be having is a broader discussion about risk assessment. We need to be deciding one thing: should they be released or should they not be released? If the answer is yes, then we need to determine what the least, the easiest terms of agreement to ensure that they come back to present in front of court would be. And so we need to have a broader discussion about this. It shouldn't be a partisan bickering point.
Okay, Bob Price, does Senator Bettencourt have it right here?
Well, all we have to do is look at what happened last year when the Democrat-led courts released thousands of violent criminals on low bond or no bond, and the murder rate in the city of Houston, as Andy Kahn has talked about, skyrocketed. And this is just a temporary policy to empty the jails out, save the county some money probably, but it puts violent criminals on the street. You're seeing the same thing at the federal level now, where President Biden has now ordered the release of every detained immigrant who's set for deportation, whether they're violent criminals. 92% of those people are convicted or charged criminals, and this is just a blanket release of those people onto the streets.
Bill King, we have publicly praised Sheriff Ed Gonzalez on this program for his handling of the pandemic in a very difficult situation. You know, what's your take? Is this a smart move to make this release?
Well, I think Ed's caught between a rock and a hard spot here, frankly, and I understand his dilemma. He's basically petitioned to Judge Rosenthal to get permission to release these people. And Judge Rosenthal is an excellent judge. I've appeared before a number of times. I think she'll sort this out. But I do think that, you know, Bob's point about these felony charges, these people getting out on felony bonds, I think we're up to almost 100 murders that have been committed now by people out on felony bonds.
Yes.
And by the way, the victims are almost exclusively minorities.
Yes.
And this is taking a tremendous toll. And it's one thing, look, nobody ought to be in jail for a hot check or, you know, or something, you know, shoplifting or something like that. Nobody ought to be held in jail for that. But we're talking about letting people out that are career criminals on weapons charges. On people are out for previous murders and they go out and get a bond and go out and commit it. It's absurd.
All right, Tomaro Bell, you know, there are 8,000 or 9,000 people in the jail. Can we find 2,000 on the bottom end in terms of their risk to the public in order to make the jail a little safer?
I agree with what Bill said. If you're in jail for a hot check or because you didn't have insurance and your tail light was busted and you already had some tickets, then okay, yes, let them out. But let me tell you, empty in the jail, just empty in the jail, hell no. Because we're already dealing with those judges who so damn scared of Rodney Ellis that they're letting these people out with felonies who they're coming out and they're murdering the people who told that they committed the murder, and we're not holding them and they're not coming back unless they got rearrested and now they're out on another bond. So I don't believe this is right. Tom Ramsey had an excellent prime town hall meeting on this Wednesday, and Andy Cohen was one of the speakers, and he talked about it. Do you all know in the Wall Street Journal, Chicago is number 36, in the most crime. Houston is 21. 21. Do we need to try to get to be number one in that? Hell no.
All right, final 45 seconds goes to Tony Diaz.
I think Sheriff Gonzalez is asking the judge and other judges to really be methodical, because these aren't those dangerous folks that, of course, I don't want on the streets either. 360 of these folks are basically waiting for trial on nonviolent offenses. About 1,500 are people that just don't have the $1,000 to get out on bond. I agree, we need to be very careful to keep real hardened criminals off the streets, but we got to make room for them in jail as well, because that's the problem that Sheriff Gonzalez is facing. His jails are too small. They admit the 9,000 capacity for the COVID-19 epidemic. I think this is a smart way to proceed.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. Up next, the history-making elevation of Kamala Harris. A trailblazing Texas lawmaker is set to unpack the extraordinary meaning of a black Asian woman leading America at the highest level. History was made on January 20th with the overdue smashing of a persistent glass ceiling. With her oath of office, Kamala Harris became the first woman, the first black, and the first South Asian to serve as Vice President of the United States. For perspective, we turn to the longest-serving African-American woman in the Lone Star State, trailblazer and legislative icon, Texas House Representative Senfronia Thompson. What was going through your heart and mind as she took the oath of office as our nation's first African-American and first Asian and first woman vice president?
The glass ceiling is being broken again. I was happy to see that glass ceiling broken. And I thought about the many, many years it took for women to get to that point in time in America. But more importantly, I was happy that it was in the country of the United States of America. It shows that our democracy works. It shows that the will of the people prevails and respected, and it shows the great impact that voting has in the electoral process.
You once were a high school teacher, and
Yes.
and you know young people. What kind of example does it set for them to see someone who looks like them in the Oval Office with the president, leading the world's greatest democracy?
And let them know that there are opportunities for them. It may not be in politics, but it may be in other areas of life, and that they can achieve, and because of their gender, it will not be a handicap any longer. Those vestiges are going to be falling away, and I think in some point in time during our continuous growth of our society, I believe very strongly that we're going to start looking at the worth of the individuals. What can they contribute to society, and how can their contribution improve and make society best for all of us?
Ms. T, I've seen it happen. People lean over to you and ask for a piece of advice, a piece of wisdom. What wisdom would you offer Vice President Harris?
Continue to listen to the people, do those things that are right, and make improvements in the lives of children. And don't forget those persons who she says she stands on the shoulders of, who may still need help, advice, encouragement, and we can work together to help her and the new presidency make this country one of the greatest countries in the world. We have that reputation. We need to improve upon it a bit, and we can maintain that reputation, because the doors have been opened for every college and university, for every young man and their young woman in this United States of America to know that things can be achieved in spite of your ethnicity, in spite of your gender.
Up next, an unforgettable inaugural voice. Powerful, poignant, but more than anything, full of hope for our nation's future.
When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. In the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one.
Extraordinary. Thanks for joining us. The conversation continues on a national level. Next with Fox News Sunday and host Chris Wallace. From all of us here, have a safe and healthy